Hello and welcome to Because Growth Matters, the podcast for sales professionals, business leaders, growth-driven team members. I'm your host, Daniel Robus, and we are here to rethink how we lead, coach, and grow in today's sales landscape, which I think we can all agree is changing quickly. Guys, today I have a coup. We have a celebrated speaker, an author, a strategist, whose insights have transformed companies and is having a massive effect in the world. Douglas Kruger. Now, you're in Jersey. What are you doing, a young South African guy in Jersey? Tell us where you are.
Yes, okay, so Jersey, it is famed for being the sunniest part of the British Isles, which I always say is a little bit like saying the least wet bit of a soggy gym sock. So what happened was, if you don't know where it is, Jersey is just off the coast of France. It's actually criminally close to France, but it belongs to Britain. It is its own independent little island nation, but it technically falls under the Crown. Long story, loads of British history, but essentially what it is, it's under the King, but not under the UK Parliament. We have our own government. So what happened was, 4 years ago, the speaking industry came to a grinding halt. The entire world got together and said, let's have ourselves a little plague. And they shut down the stages, the events, everything that was happening publicly. And my industry effectively died on its feet. There was a little virtual work. I still write books. But in terms of getting onto stages in front of real live human beings, it was massacred, wiped out. And at the same time as that, my wife received an email from Deloitte in the Channel Islands. And being South African, we thought it was a scam. We are terminally suspicious of anything like that. So we get this email saying, would you like to come and work for our corporation in the Channel Islands? And we're thinking, yeah, of course, just send us your bank account details, etc., etc. But we followed up and it turned out to be real. And my son was 4 years old at the time. And we thought, well, what an adventure. I mean, why not? I'm not able to speak at events at the moment. Why don't we go and have a look at this beautiful little island? And we've been here for the past 4 years. It's delightful. Tiny, but delightful.
I'm so embarrassed in preparation, and I even spoke to Mr. Kruger and said, hey, I've got friends in Jersey, and I was meaning New York City. So
everyone does that.
As we built up to this session, I was like, I'm such an idiot. He's going to think, what is this host doing? So all cards on the table. Never been to Jersey. I don't know anyone in Jersey. I hope you're having a smashing time.
Oh, Daniel, I'll tell you some of my embarrassing moments. They're way worse. They happen in front of live audiences. But yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of people have that reaction because the most famous Jersey is New Jersey. We're old Jersey. But in fact, the one is named after the other. In the same way that a Brit will land in an open continent, and in a flash of inspiration, he'll name a place Piccadilly. That's how New York was named after Old York, and New Jersey was named by someone who came from this island after Old Jersey. But
we have a flag, and we are going to claim this place and give it a new name.
Not afraid to use it.
No.
And the new name will be the same as the old name.
Now, Douglas, what exactly do? You are an author, but your roots are in speaking. How does someone come out of school and then say, bugger that for a lark, I'm not going to become an accountant, I'm going to be a speaker?
Yeah, it was between that and becoming a stripper, and my parents wouldn't let me do that. So basically what happened, I was a very shy kid, and the least likely candidate to become a full-time speaker. But what happened was, at a school in the West Rand of Johannesburg, a group called Toastmasters did a small public speaking and leadership course. And I discovered something wonderful. I would encourage other introverts to look into this because there's something beautiful about their process. You get to go backstage and prepare the best version of yourself. I mean, very much like in sales, it's not just live action all the time. You start backstage, preparing your thoughts, preparing your strategy, thinking through how you tell your stories, how you do your pitch. And then you get out onto the stage in front of this Toastmasters group and deliver the very best version of yourself. And I found something wonderful and addictive about that. And it led from there into public speaking contests. I wasn't even aware that there was such a thing as a world championships for public speaking. No one's ever heard of it. But it turns out that there was and there is. And every year it's hosted in a different nation around the world. So what happens is you compete against 4 different clubs in your area. Then you go up against your city, your nation, and so it builds until you represent effectively Southern Africa, which is what I did, at the World Championships. And I did that on 5 different occasions. Now, the bizarre thing about that is there's a natural segue into professional speaking. Very naturally, people come up and say, oh, we like what you did. Come and do it for our team, for our staff, whatever the case might be. But it put me in a bizarre situation because I was 20, 21 years old. And here you have like CEOs going, come and speak for us. It's like, I can, but I don't know what to say. So the next 25 years were dedicated to writing books, learning the lessons, unearthing useful principles of business growth and personal success. And I'm now up to, I think it's about 14 or 15 commercially published books, and it's what I do for a living. So as a result of that, I now stand on stages, I deliver ideas, and I write business books. And it keeps me out of mischief.
Would you say you're in sales mentoring and coaching or enablement? How would you categorize yourself so our listeners can get a feeling for this Douglas Kruger phenomenon?
Yeah. Well, I'd start by saying everyone is in sales in one way or another. Even as a sole proprietor and a speaker on stages, I myself have to be my own brand ambassador, representative, and salesperson. But in terms of interacting with corporate groups, sales teams, leadership groups, and so forth, what I like to do is I like to look for what I call behavioral smart cuts. And what that is effectively the things we learn as we go along that make everything work a little better. And I study them, and I tell stories about them, and I help to share them. So beyond that, I don't get too hung up in titles. I mean, you could say trainer, speaker, coach, pick a title. Mostly I think about myself as an author and speaker. So I keep it as broad as humanly possible. The formats that I would follow would be effectively a 1-hour keynote on a stage, or a 3 or 4 hour workshop in the morning with, say, a sales or a leadership team. And that's a slightly different kettle of fish. I'd start off by getting a brief from them, finding out about their industry, learning what their challenges are, what they've struggled with, what they're dealing with on the landscape, and trying to tailor something to help them as best I can, help them to meet their goals.
Wow. And do you see a theme that's coming out over the last 18 months around companies and the challenges that we're facing, especially in the acquisition of new business and keeping going?
Yeah, several. And some of them work in complete contradistinction to one another. And that can get quite confusing. So, I mean, mostly at the moment, the world is caught up in AI and it's, everything. If you go to a conference now, you're going to hear variations on this message. AI has already changed your entire industry. You're defunct. 12-year-olds are starting businesses. And here you are in your 40s, you failure. You don't even know how to use ChatGPT. What are some of the other good ones? Oh, knowledge is increasing so exponentially that everything we knew 5 minutes ago will be superseded and tripled 5 minutes from now. And the kind of tone of the thing is panic, panic, panic. And it's very easy to do that as a speaker because what you're doing is you're playing on the spectacular fear points. So it's almost abusive to audiences and very easy to do. I don't like it. And the reason I don't like it is because, that stuff is supposed to help us meet our goals. That's all. It's supposed to be another tool, and it's a really great tool. And yes, it's a tool that's speeding things up. So in terms of themes on the landscape right now, that's got to be the biggest one. But then you get the mavericks and the people who think against the grain. And I rather like these individuals, and I sometimes flatter myself that maybe I'm one of them, who are going, well, if everyone is congregating on that landscape, if that's the battleground where everyone has gone, then perhaps they are leaving battlegrounds wide open for someone else. And there are ways of interacting with our clients, with other, in a B2B scenario, with human hearts and minds that don't necessarily involve AI. Not everything happens on a screen, and sometimes those who can think beyond the chatbot may have something of an advantage. I'm busy putting together a book at the moment, and as part of the flow of ideas, I have a chapter that said, what have customers wanted since the dawn of time? And it's actually quite grounding because there are things that never change. Whether you are Stone Age man trying to sell the idea of fire, or you are 2026 humanity trying to sell your latest AI creation, there are certain things that we want and that we need. And we look for quality. We look for trustworthiness. We look for someone who essentially cares about us and gives a damn about what we're trying to achieve. And these are things that never change. So yes, the technology swirls, it changes over time, and I think we maybe get a little too fearful of it. There's actually a great example that I quite like to use on a stage. You've probably come across David Attenborough, the British naturalist.
You and his voice is very similar, very similar.
Yes, like I was about to say, Yes, in fact, that's a darn good point, and it's part of the story. So everyone knows the voice. I mean, it's like, the penguin walks across the ice, but he is ill-fated, for here comes the leopard seal. His death is imminent. And I mean, he's been doing it for the longest possible time. Now, the other day, and I find this blew my mind, I was listening to an old British radio show. It's called The Goon Show. And it was a sort of comedy that they used. You know The Goon Show?
Of course.
Brilliant. So this thing, I mean, it aired in like the 1950s. And in one of the episodes, the characters have this crazy adventure going on, and a lion has somehow escaped into central London. And one of the characters, I kid you not, says the line, "Quick, somebody call David Attenborough." And it stopped me in my tracks, and I went, no, come on. So I went and I had a look for the broadcast date on this thing. Daniel, it was 1957. 1957. And he was the top name, the top icon in that industry. They were talking about him then. So when you say the guy's like 102 years old, you're not kidding. I mean, I had to go and look up whether he was old enough for that to be real. And he's been doing it for that long. But now, before I get totally lost on my tangent, the point here is, imagine if in the 1960s, he had seen the advance of new technology and gone, I prefer the way I did things in the 50s with radio and diagrams and old cameras. Or in the 1980s, I don't like these newfangled high-definition cameras. In the 1990s, I'm not sure I like aerial shots or things from outer space. And now, I mean, it's high-speed, it drones, it's, underwater cameras, things of that nature. The tech has not just changed, but I mean, it has revolutionized around him. But if you think about it, he does the same thing. And he's been doing the same thing for well over... Man, it's going on like 3/4 of a century now. So there's something comforting about that. He's good at the thing he does, he focuses on it. The tech changes and swirls around him, but he's like a constant theme traveling through time. And I always tell that tale for people who are terrified about the new tech. It's not about the tech. It will always change. If it works great, use it. Usually, good new tech is about speeding things up and making things easier to do. Fantastic. AI does that. It's not about the tech. So, don't get too hung up on that.
You talk about that in your book, Own Your Industry. You talk about becoming a category 1. So you're saying a category 1 sales leader needs to understand CRM, needs to understand AI, needs to understand our communication methods better than the next guy. And then what?
Yeah. And in fact, to the end of touching the heartstrings of the buyer. And this applies even in a B2B scenario, because we're always selling to human beings. That's the one thing that never goes away. And a lot of what I speak on, I don't want to say short circuits or circumvents the sales process, but it's complementary to it. It's the idea that if you position yourself correctly, the business comes to you. And sales teams can do that by teaching their market how to need them. And organizations with no sales teams can do it as well. You find that in every industry, if you kind of cast your eye across the landscape, you'll have thousands of also-rans who all try very hard to look identical. And the sad part is they get it right. They all blend in, look exactly the same. Then you get the industry leaders who are what Seth Godin likes to talk about as a purple cow, something completely different, something from the genetics, from the ground up, unique. And if you do that well, and I mean, this is a complex topic, but if you do it well, the business starts coming to you. The analogy I like to use for that is, I like to tell audiences, imagine a large crowd. And this crowd of people represents your target market for the rest of your days, all your income, all your potential earnings for the rest of your life. And wherever you have a large crowd, you're going to meet two different personalities. And the one is the pie man. And the pie man is essentially the person who's going around the edges of the crowd, tapping people on the shoulder one by one and saying, "Would you like to buy a pie?" And his entire business model is tap a shoulder, sell a pie, receive a coin. Now, he will make as many coins as the shoulders he taps. And when he stops tapping shoulders and goes home, he stops earning coins. You don't want to be the pie man in your industry. So, what's the alternative? Well, if you look over the heads of the crowd in your mind's eye, halfway up the hillside you will see the guru. And the guru is the person they've all assembled to listen to. And it's got nothing to do with tapping shoulders. This is someone they follow on purpose. Because the guru has ideas about how their lives can be better. The guru has a certain energy that is attractive and compelling. The guru is helping them to become the best version of themselves, reach their goals, achieve their desires. And for that reason, the market goes to the guru. So the pie man goes to market, but the market goes to the guru. And that's who you want to be. You want to be the standout name, a category of one in your industry. And in a best case scenario, you want the business to come to you. And we all start as pie men. You know, we all have to start off by tapping shoulders and trying to make a quick buck. But the sooner you can become the thought leader in your industry and tilt that scale so that the business starts coming to you, the better. Ultimately, that's what we're after.
Sure, there's a lot to unpack there. How does the pie man then get people to come to him? Because there is a market there and there are people that are hungry for pies. And, you know, they don't know it yet. But that talks around execution from a sales perspective. You've seen quite a few sales teams. What do you think is a key metric that they ignore when they're trying to become the guru or that they don't even know about the guru? What is the metric that we're auditing which you think, guys, we're not in the 70s?
All right, so let's do it at both ends of the scale. At the very entry level, I suspect the simplest problem that new sales teams and new people in the industry face is a failure to listen. They're so focused on themselves and on, say, a script that they may have that they're not hearing what's actually happening in the industry. So the entry-level version of the pie man is, I have a pie and I'm desperate to foist a pie on you. As opposed to,
Eat my pie.
Who are you?
Yeah,
who are you? What do you eat? What do you want? What's your story? What are your challenges? So that's at the entry level. Now, at the highest level of that, you get the positioning of an entire brand. And this is perhaps stepping beyond mere sales teams and going to the entire brand.
A company identity,
and you start,
I guess.
The company identity, yes. And you start to get this idea where leadership want to look like everyone else. And it's such an understandable psychology. It's like if you have a business, you want it to feel serious, like you're doing all the right things. So you look at the industry and you try to emulate. The problem with that is that, of course, you disappear. And, you know, using South Africa as an example, I had such a great example of this. I was at an event once where the marketing head of a business school was seated next to me in a convention, and we were sitting watching the other speakers, and then I get the chance to stand up and I speak about this idea of becoming the industry leader, the expert. And I sit back down afterwards and he goes, you've just explained something that I've been grappling with all of my career. And I go, cool, what is it? He says, you know, we compete against Gibbs. And Gibbs in South Africa regularly kind of takes that top spot as like best industry leading business school. And he says, it's frustrated me all of my career because we offer the same courses, we have the same textbooks, we're sometimes the cheaper option. He says our product in every sense is like identical, and yet they keep coming out on top. And he said, the penny just dropped for me. He says the dean of our business school is a shy, retiring person who doesn't want to create waves. He wants to blend in and be academic. He said the dean of Gibbs, by contrast, gets out there and makes waves.
He's a salesman.
He's a thought leader, and he gets out there and speaks strongly about what's happening in the landscape. And that tilts him from being the vendor of a product to being a thought leader driving where the country is going, at least in part for the level of his authority. He is a voice speaking to industry, to academia, to the future of the nation. And that has a vastly different energy to being a vendor of a product. So those are quite extremes, not listening on the one hand and not actually being bold enough to become a thought leader on the other. And all the way in between, we have, gradations of lessons and so forth. And they're all fascinating. But yeah, it's all about graduating ourselves up that level from amateur to expert. And the simplest way to do that is really, it's so straightforward that we often miss it. You need to study the behavior at the level above you. It's as simple as that. If I want to be a great speaker, I should not be studying speakers who earn what I earn or do what I do. I should be looking at the world's leaders and saying, what's different about them? What is the gap between where I am and what they're doing? So you study the next level up, and to the best of your abilities, you try to match it or exceed it.
That's why I'm interviewing you. Don't you know?
Well, thank you. Oh, fantastic.
Douglas,
you make me blush, Daniel.
I suffer from LSD, so lead singer disease. So I love being on the stage, but when I listen to your cadence and I listen to where you're going, there's a difference between being able to do it and being able to rock someone's world. Now, you've been doing this for a number of years. How do you get the people to take, because I said it yesterday, we're not there to entertain. We do entertain, but that's not the aim. The aim is to change behavior. How do you do that? How do you ensure that these lessons you share actually make an impact?
Yes. Oh gosh, Daniel, I've got such a great one for you here. This comes from, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, I think it's Daniel Kahneman, one of the sort of famous cognitive psychologists. And it's such a simple little trick, but it works so well. The phrase is, when that happens, do this instead. Okay, so let me unpack that for you. We all get stuck in behaviors that are more or less productive. And you, for example, as a sales manager, might look at your team and you'll have, let's assume, a team of 10 people, of whom 2 are shining superstars. They are absolutely shooting the lights out. Those are what you would call your bright spots. Then you've got the other 8. The other 8 are varying levels of okay to dreadful. So what most leaders will tend to get wrong is they will hemorrhage time in trying to fix the other 8. What you actually want to do is study your bright spots. Ask in sort of story terms, what do they do through the day? What are the actions that they are doing that make them so effective? Then you take that and turn it into literally a story and teach it to the other 8. So this has been in Harvard Business Review several times because it's so effective. Instead of trying to fix the broken performer, you study the bright spot and simply teach it. And it changes so many things. I mean, it's effective like 10 ways from Sunday. But basically what you then want to do is go, when this happens, do that instead. So you've got your underperformer who has a scenario that comes up and they repeatedly do the wrong thing. Now, you don't want to chew them out for doing the wrong thing. Instead, you want to replace the behavior with a bright spot behavior. So you ask what comes just before it. Is it like they pick up the phone? Or they walk into an office and then? So there's always that thing that comes before the incorrect behavior or the ineffective behavior. Identify that. And then you tell them, when that happens, I want you to do this instead. And that is such a direct way of changing behavior because it gives them a prompt. It gives them a real world scenario that they will face in the next couple of days. Okay, I've walked in the building. Now I'm supposed to do the other thing. And when they start to do it, they find there's something of a slipstream there because by definition, it works. And it works quicker and it works better and it's less frustrating. And then they start to love it. And that is the heart and soul of behavioral change. Now, for people like ourselves, Daniel, speaking on a stage, what we want to do is share the entertaining story about the principle. And then at the end, you do that as well. You say, so when you walk into your business on Monday and this is about to happen to you, try this instead. And what that does in terms of, if you had to bring it down to a formula, it's called PSA, Point, Story, Application. So as professional speakers, that's kind of what we do for a living. We make a point, tell a story that makes that point come alive, and then we give them the application, which is, when this happens, do that instead. And it's so simple, but it's so powerful.
If you had to take your last 15 years and you had a do-over, what would you do over again?
That is an interesting one. I have a bit of a schizo thing going on at the moment where there are two major pursuits in my life. And I love them both, and it's quite weird. It does odd things to the branding. So the one is the business speaking and writing business books. Now, just to confuse myself, as we left South Africa 4 years ago, I wrote a novel. And Penguin, who published my business books, to my astonishment, actually agreed to publish the thing, and then the next one. So then I kept going, and I kept writing the darn things, but it's a little odd, because in South Africa, they're in sale in the bookstores, but the big markets for literature are like the UK and US and so on. And actually, just this year, I've had a novel accepted in the UK, and it comes out later this year. But it puts me in such a weird position, because it's like, what do you do with the branding? I mean, I've got social media presence, but do I now go, hi folks, my new business book is coming out, and at the same time go buy the novel? And I'll be honest with you, I don't know how to solve that. You could, I suppose, split them in two and do totally separate branding. I'm not sure that I want to do that, but it's sort of a long way around of answering your question is, if I could go back 10 years, I might stick to just one or the other. And got to be honest with you, I'm not sure which I'd choose. I love them both in equal measure.
I would so strongly disagree with you there.
Which way would you jump?
I would stay with both, and it is part of who you are. There's a 19-year-old walking behind us, and she's published 2 books, and she's got a whole bunch coming. And one is a book on poetry about coming through depression and teen suicide and all the rest of it. And the other one is a book about identity, and she writes music and all the rest of it. But it makes her who she is. You can't take one without the other. And I think, I'm not sure what the novel's about, but, if it's a way to get out of our lives, then you're just proving that this myth of work-life balance, that's nonsense. We have life, and we work, and we have family, and we have love, and we have regret, and we have all of this, and it's all blended together. And it's those trade-offs that make us better humans and better dads and better leaders and all the rest. So I can't wait to read the book. If it's what's interesting, because my genre is very different. I read hardcore fantasy. So
right. Okay. Well, this one is a dark thriller. I won't digress too much. Yeah, cool. So the basic idea is you've got a bunch of school kids who think that they're going on an international exchange program, and they go from South Africa and from various countries around the world, and they're all gathered up into this mansion on the California hillside for what they think is orientation week. But then they start going missing, and their passports are missing, and there's less and less adult supervision, and they start to wonder what on earth is going on here, because kids just keep disappearing out of this mansion. Essentially, it's a shopping program. And our protagonist, a young girl from South Africa, she has to figure this out and get out of the mansion. It's called House of the Judas Goat. And the reason it's called House of the Judas Goat, a Judas goat on a farm is a goat that is literally a Judas, a traitor. It actually works with the farmer to lead the sheep to the slaughter. And this is a genuine thing. So what I've got is, in this house, one of the kids is a Judas, a traitor, working with the people who are running this scam. And our young protagonist has to try and figure out what's going on and work out which of her friends is a traitor. It's the whole thing in a nutshell. It comes out in
Where can
in
people
August.
get it?
Easiest way would be either to go the ebook, which is everywhere, Amazon, or to download the audiobook. I read it myself on Audible. It may be a little tricky to get the paperback in South Africa. I'm not sure. UK is easy. Yeah, you could just order it on Amazon or, in theory, walk into a bookstore and find it. So, yeah.
Oh, amazing. I can't wait to get there. Let's get back into sales. Into sales.
The other side of my personality.
Which is really cool. And you said you enjoy sales and you've enjoyed being part of it. And a friend of mine and the funder of this podcast, Tony, says he taught you everything you know about sales.
Tony is one of my favorite human beings on the entire planet. If you get the chance to meet Tony Cross, do it. When I first met him, I must have been about 19 or 20 years old. I worked for him, and I thought he was such a cold and sinister man. I was worried about having so unfriendly a boss, and I could not have been more wrong. He is, honestly, he's in my top 3 human beings on the planet. I adore him. He's fantastic. Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that. So if you had to be sitting with him and talking about the state of sales globally and specifically sales leadership. Where would you rate it across, let's take high-tech services, manufacturing, the areas that impact me and it's what I'm interested in. Where would you say they are right now?
I think Tony and I would start off by discussing the advance of AI and everything, all the positives that it has. And then I suspect what would happen is our conversation would veer off into uncharted territory and the sort of thing that people forget to do. And I mean, there's just, such a great example from here in the UK of a gentleman, young guy by the name of Stephen Bartlett, who is a multi-millionaire many times over by the age of 30. And it's all down to a blue slide. So effectively what he did here, now if you wanted to become a multi-millionaire business owner in pound terms several times over, the chances are your mind would go straight to AI and scaling up. The last thing you'd think of is a blue slide, and yet that's what worked. So what happened here is he started up this kind of social media and consulting organization in Manchester, and he's quite famous in the UK. Landed his first client, and it was a well-paid deal. And he does something that he describes in the audiobook Diary of a CEO, which actually came out quite recently. I'm listening to it at the moment. He says he irresponsibly spent a great deal of money buying a massive building, way more than he needed for his small team. And then he looked at the staircases and thought, that's boring. Had it knocked out and replaced it with a big blue slide that went into a colourful ball pit of the kind that South Africans would be familiar with at like a Spur playground, or you may have seen at like any of the playgrounds, around the UK. It became such a draw card that he never needed a sales team. Over the years, the business came to him because firstly, the BBC came and interviewed him. Then it was ITV, Channel 1, Channel 2, Channel 3, then the podcasts, and then famous business leaders from around the world. And the result of this, I mean, it's very much like my Toastmasters thing, is people start coming to you and saying, would you become the person to talk to? And he built this multi-million pound business on the strength, he says, of a blue slide. Now, there's something about that I love because we are losing track of the idea that there are real humans at the far end of a buying process. AI will optimize the living daylights out of your process, and it can make things faster, easier, better. It'll draw you a pretty drawing, etc., etc. What's your blue slide? What is the thing that so distinguishes you, that is such a unique signature that the business starts coming to you? We lose track of that, and I think that's to our great detriment. In fact, in the opening story of a new business book that I'm writing on at the moment, and the tentative title is Unrivaled, I speak about this idea of unique signatures, something that is so different, so unignorable that the business comes to you, like the blue slide. I actually use that example. And I think of one from South Africa. It's such a bizarre story, but it's true. There was a guy who used to sell bunny chow at the side of the road just outside of Soweto. And he had a little vending cart. Now, for our UK listeners, I mean, imagine something akin to a hot dog cart. And what he would do was you'd have long queues of people like beating down his door to buy bunny chow from him. And a bunny chow is basically take a loaf of bread, hollow it out, fill it with kind of curried mutton, and then close it up again, put the crust back on. And that's a bunny chow.
And don't tell your cardiologist anything about it.
Yeah, it's as delicious as it is bad for you. Yeah. So what would then happen? And again, if you can figure out how this became part of his business process, you tell me. But people would queue up and you had two options. You could either pay the standard price, in which case he'd hand over your bunny chow and you'd leave. Or you could pay a little extra. And if you did, he would wrap your bunny chow first in cellophane and then in newspaper. And then beside a 4-lane highway, the N1 South going past Soweto, he would wait for a truck to go by. And at the last second, he would hurl your bunny chow out onto the highway under the wheels of a 10-ton truck. Now, your bunny chow would go bouncing around under the truck and it would get run over and smushed and so on. And then chances are 2 or 3 other cars would hit it as well. And then he would look for a gap in the traffic. And again, for our UK listeners, I mean, think health and safety here. And he would dart out into the traffic and retrieve your bunny chow and hand it to you. Now, what's the point? Well, the point is then you get to eat a bunny chow that's been run over by a truck. That's the entire point. in a nutshell. You'd open it up and it would be this kaleidoscopic mess of like meats and sauces and bread and so on, and people paid extra for it. I only know about this story, right? Because several people called into Talk Radio 702 to tell the tale about it. Somebody told this story one night, and several other callers called in and said, yes, like everybody loves this guy. He's like so famous. And if you think about it, it's like no sales team, no algorithm, no AI. And how on earth did he ever discover that one for the first time? But now it's his unique signature. And people came in droves to have a run-over bunny chow. And I don't suspect that a group of people sitting around in a boardroom discussing how to optimize the sales team using AI are ever going to arrive at, let's chuck our bunny chow onto a 4-lane highway. There is something very different going on with that thought process.
Don't we stop that though, Douglas? We put in place that we've got to have this process that we follow, and the leadership is all about auditing the process and making sure the people are there. And these kind of embaked walls that we put in front of ourselves, isn't sales about being creative and about doing that? Or is that the realm of people who don't work in big companies?
Yeah. And Daniel, like as you speak there, I just have this mental image from A Muppet's Christmas Carol of the very serious eagle going, you will love business. We will do business. And that's what happens is, there's money on the line, there's careers on the line, so we become awfully serious. And it's the worst thing we could do. Because like Gibbs in the business schools, if everyone's being serious, then what we do is we all become identical. Everybody blends in, and we're all desperate to blend in and to fit in. And then we start thinking that originality is the specific shade of green on your corporate slides. That's my brand. That's got nothing to do with your brand. Nobody cares. Nobody remembers it. Nobody recognizes it. A brand is a living thing. And to the degree that you make a brand an exciting, living thing, you become that category of one, something special on the horizon. And you think about it and you go, yeah, but some businesses are inherently serious. I wonder if that's true. I mean, look to Manchester and this consulting firm with a blue slide. I think you do have to have a certain tone, but I think playfulness within that tone is always available to you. And we just don't think that way. I mean, we've been very much trained out of it.
My favorite saying of my life is life rocks if you let it. And there is this bit where we get over 25, we've got kids, we've got mortgages, we've got obligations, and life's no longer fun. And I really think if life's not fun for you, you're doing something wrong, because we're not getting another cake fair. I'm never going to have my name in lights. I'm never going to play for Liverpool. I'll be lucky to get to Anfield. But, I'm making the best of it right now. There's collateral beauty everywhere if we just let ourselves enjoy it. And there's nothing better for me than helping customers through this, unlocking this. Like I had a customer the other day, I said to him, you're not presenting. Why? See, because your first 3 slides are about your company and the buildings and where they are. You're not putting that in front of this audience.
Our history since the dawn of time. Nobody cares.
They care about the fire that they... Anyway, we rejigged his slides. He loved it. Tell me, you talk a lot about moving from poverty into power. You talk about moving yourself and the company into an unbreakable state. Why the emphasis on this? What is fueling this down there inside the heart?
Yeah. Okay, so, I mean, moment of honesty here. I grew up relatively nice neighborhood, but kind of the poor kid. And I wasn't even aware that our family was struggling until I hit about sort of 10, 11 years of age. And then you start to notice things around you, like how your life is not quite like the lives of others. And, I can't spin you a sob story about like walking through the snow to school. It wasn't that desperate, but we had some times where... Oh, can I? Oh, nobody knows. Okay, so I used to crawl over glass through the snow to a school in another country.
You went to school at least. Jeez.
Oh, you were lucky. We had one winter, like a memorable one, where our power was cut off because we couldn't make the payments. Our family only ate because the church fed us with food baskets. And I can remember how vulnerable that made me feel. And as you grow older, you start to look at different nations, ways of doing things, business, and so forth. And you start to see that poverty is not a necessary thing. And I'm amazed that, we don't have global parades celebrating the fact that over the past 2 decades, we've reduced poverty to the point where 20 years ago, it was some 35% of the world living on the breadline, and it's now down to about 8%. I mean, that is phenomenal. It really is.
Staggering.
It's an economic miracle, and it is under-celebrated. And as a result of that, I tried to get my head around, how does this happen? How do families get caught in generational cycles of poverty? And what do you do about it? And the answers that I pursued then became the basis of books like Is Your Thinking Keeping You Poor? And Poverty Proof, and books of that nature. And this sounds soppy and altruistic, but it's like, I don't want other people to go through that. It's not necessary. We live in a world now where with a little work, with a little intelligence, with a little application, you can prosper, and there is so much prosperity available. I want people to have those answers. If you're unwilling to put in the work, that's one thing. But for people who are honestly striving, I want them to know what works. And that's again why I'm interested in what I call those behavioural smart cuts, things that get you there quicker. And it's been a lifetime of study for me, and it's something I believe in very deeply.
So if you had to speak to an audience, a middle to lower income school of kids that are finishing in London and going out and facing the world, of your books, which would you recommend that they start with to get a firm foundation? And then the second part of it is this 40 to 55-year-old bracket of man who's losing relevance and feeling like they're nowhere. Where would you say they need to go and read?
So I would actually say in all cases that the 2 books, I've actually written several on the topic, but the 2 that do that would be Is Your Thinking Keeping You Poor? And Poverty Proof. And, if you are the sort of the audiobook kind, I've read those as well. I prefer audiobooks to paper. I just get through so much more that way. But for your young person leaving the school in perhaps an impoverished part of the UK, whatever the case might be, there's a universe out there. I mean, I had a very similar scenario where I came out of school feeling relatively hopeless. And unless someone opens your eyes to how much universe is out there, it is difficult to believe that things can improve, because we tend to think at the level of what we see around us, not what we see at an economic level above us. But that's what you want to do. You want to start to study the people who are at the next levels up, economically speaking. Don't study the behaviors of people who are on the same level as you. That represents a kind of thought pool that is not necessarily helping you. And there are so many practical things you can do, but essentially you want to look for the things that get you further. And I'll just give you a very practical example of that one. Public speaking skills. I mean, it's what we do. Harvard Business Review once did a study where they said, what is the number one thing you can do to advance in your career, to make sure that you get promoted quickly, that you end up relatively wealthy? And across all industries, they came back to presentation skills. They reckon that's the number one thing that you can invest in order to get further quicker. So that's a smart cut, and it is a smart cut to wealth. If you are able to gather your thoughts, express them well, you can be the leader, you can sell more effectively, you can persuade more effectively, and it impacts everything that you do. Even if, like myself, you want to write books for a living, speaking will help you. If you want to become a theatrical performer, speaking will help you. Whatever it is that you do, if you master basic presentation skills, it will stand you in good stead. And I then try to collect as many simple but useful answers like that as I possibly can. And some of them are fairly philosophical as well. I mean, for example, several of my books, I start off by making the point, divorce your wealth hopes from anything to do with government. And this is on the heels of a great many economic historians, my favorite of whom is Dr. Thomas Sowell, but there are several others as well, who essentially make the point that government doesn't make people richer. Government pretty much gets in the way. Like, you need it, you need law and order, but if you are wanting to advance yourself and to get to another level, do not pin your hopes on government. It is the worst god you could possibly serve.
Power. There's lots to unpack there. Let me talk from a sales manager perspective. What is the one tool in their toolbox that you would say, guys, you need this? For all your high performers from sales managers, they've got this one tool in their toolbox. What is it?
Okay. I would probably pick on, and I'm just trying to think of the name of the author. It's not Peter Thiel. Who came up with this one? It'll pop into my head in just a moment. But the idea of what's called 0 to 1 behavior. Say, for example, you are starting out building a new business, building a new sales team, building place in an industry. We get awfully caught up on all the wrong metrics. It's like, do I have enough people? Do I have enough desks? Have we got enough computers? Have we got the nice jackets? And so on and so forth. The only thing that matters is 0 to 1 behavior. 0 is when you do not have a paying customer. 1 is when you actually receive money into your account. So if you do a successful sales pitch and it goes very well, but it doesn't translate into actual revenue, you haven't hit 1 yet. That is still 0 level behavior. That distinction between 0 to 1, we could spend hours unpacking it, but essentially that is the thing that I would focus myself on. The author, and again his name just sort of evades me at the moment, has a whole system for how to look at 0 to 1 effectively. He says, all right, so if going from 0 to 1 is the thing, and I agree with him that it is, then what are the things back of that we need to do in order to make that happen in the real world? And we don't get distracted by the other things. We keep our emphasis, because we have limited time, resource, and money, on 0 to 1 behavior. Now, that is probably the starting point that I would look at. And I can remember being a very young man wanting to start my own business, something that never took off. And I think if I had known that one concept, it would have changed everything. Because I hemorrhaged time and money into all the things that don't build a business, that were not 0 to 1 behavior. So that one simple mental model, I think, makes the world of difference. I'd start there.
Wow, that's very, very cool. 2 questions just to wrap up where we're going. The first one is a standard. We've spent 40 minutes together and I've really loved it. What's the one question I should have asked you today to unlock more value for my listeners?
When next will I be belly dancing in public?
When next will you be belly dancing in public, Mr. Kruger?
How could you ask me something like Daniel? Honestly, how rude. What's the one thing you should have asked me? Okay, the one thing you should have asked me is, what distinguishes an icon in any industry? Now, this is my little heart and soul project. The thing that I love. Nice. What makes the Tony Hawk of skateboarding, the Arnold Schwarzenegger of bodybuilding, the Nigella Lawson of food, the Clarkson of cars? What distinguishes these people? And this applies in every industry. Even if, like our stuffy academic types, you are representing the Gibbs Business School where everyone else becomes invisible. There is a 3-part formula, and it is non-negotiable. Experts and icons exist at the intersection of knowledge, personality, and publicity. And you have to have all 3 or you disqualify yourself. So, knowledge, personality, publicity. When we think of becoming, say, an expert or a thought leader in our industry, we get stuck at the first one. We think of knowledge. And knowledge is the sort of thing that defines, say, the professor, the one who knows everything about that world. But it is not sufficient. If you take a Jeremy Clarkson, the knowledge is absolutely there. But there are other people who have as much knowledge about cars as Jeremy Clarkson, so why him? There are other people who are every bit as good at preparing food as, say, a Jamie Oliver or a Nigella Lawson, Gordon Ramsay, any of that sort of trio of famous icons. So what's the difference? Well, it's element number 2, personality. Jeremy Clarkson revolutionized the whole automotive industry, media and journalism around that industry, by bringing personality to it for the first time. Everyone now does it because they have to. But he was the first. So it's knowledge plus personality plus publicity. And publicity is essentially, you've got to take it on a roadshow. You've got to show it to the world. And Nigella Lawson has a vastly different personality to Clarkson. She's the sort of saucy, sultry seductress, where Clarkson has a whole different persona. But in both cases, it's there. Even the Jamie Olivers of the world, I mean, he's a quiet bloke next door type. But we know his face, we recognize his voice. Same with David Attenborough. Knowledge, personality, publicity. And I like to put it this way. If you have all the knowledge but no personality, you are merely a specialist. And if you have all the personality but no knowledge, you are a Kardashian.
Okay, so you've clearly labeled Daniel now because I'm on a steep learning curve. So Daniel Kardashian for the day. How do people get in touch with you and secure your services, Douglas?
Courier pigeon, smoke signal, whatever suits you best.
No, that doesn't get across Jersey. Yeah.
Easiest way is my website is just my name. It's douglaskruger.com. The books are all available on Audible or Amazon. Just search Douglas Kruger. It'll bring up both the novels and the business books. And my email is simply douglas@douglaskrugerspeaker.com. And I'm based in the Channel Islands, but I speak in the UK, Europe, and so forth. So I'm all over the show. And occasionally I get to pop back to South Africa and enjoy some sunny weather. Although I believe it's freezing where you are at the moment.
If I have to show you my granny blanket that I'm wearing right now, you would mock me. It is a little bit cold.
I really would.
And you're welcome to. And I think that the fact that you can go all over is such a benefit to customers just because we get to then all share in that learning and you get to see what works in certain areas.
It brings up an interesting point as well. You get to see how things are done around the world. Like here in St. Helier, which is the sort of city area of Jersey, we often have road closures and it causes incredible congestion. Then you go to a place like Sweden or Switzerland and you see that they have solutions to this, and it's such a cool little smart cut. So what they do in that case is they bring a thing that looks like a massive concertina and they unfurl it and it becomes a bridge. And you can drive up one side, drive over the roadworks and drive down the other side. And beneath it, you have the guys doing the roadworks. So they never close the road. And that's one of the benefits of just getting to see best practices in other places. You bring back smart cuts, quicker ways of doing things. And I think that's one of the great benefits of travel, is to go, how has this problem been solved somewhere else? Copy and paste.
Wow. Your friend Tony was talking around something very similar yesterday after 52 flights last year. Just being able to breathe different culture brings different thoughts into your brain. And that's such a wonderful thing. My final question for you, Mr. Douglas. What's the 1%, the small, powerful difference, mindset, habit, idea that's had the biggest impact in your career that we can take away?
3 words, one more rep. And this comes from Jim. When you're tired, right, the thing that has the most impact, that builds the most muscle, is that one more rep at the end when you're exhausted. Most of the work you've already done, your muscles are able to do. When you are exhausted and about to give up, it's that one more rep that actually makes the difference. That's where the growth is. And the same thing applies to anything. I mean, take a project like, in my world, writing books. One more rep. That little bit of extra writing in the evening, that extra input, that one more idea, just keep going. And when you meet prolific writers, and it's like you'll ask them, like, how do you find the time? How do you get it done? It's that basic principle, one more rep. A couple more sentences in the evening. Wake up a little early, get a bit more done. Do it when you can. Same applies to personal growth. I mean, listening to audiobooks, taking things in, podcasts and so forth, one more rep. It's that little extra that makes the world of difference.
Douglas Kruger, an absolute privilege for us on Because Growth Matters. I really have enjoyed it. The time's flown for me. Thank you for making a space in your diary, because we don't make time. We trade off of other things. So I really appreciate it. I'm hoping I'll get to see you again and speak to you again.
I'd love that.
You're in Johannesburg. I'm easily bribed with beer, so I will.
Fantastic. Thanks. Have a great day ahead.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Because Growth Matters. If you got value from today's conversation, please take a moment to rate the show 5 stars on your listening platform and share it with someone who might benefit as well. Don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Catch you next week.